Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Susan Kennedy Nooraldeen, and today I'm going to talk to you about a lesser known contribution of Julian Assange, the Australian journalist and publisher of WikiLeaks. It is normally the role of international humanitarian NGOs to conduct fieldwork and collect evidence of such crimes. NGOs have still visited Kuwait, but they have not attempted to collect this evidence, even though they have certainly had the capacity to do so. Additionally, as academics specialising in Kuwait area studies have failed to study the Bedoon in depth, despite the subject screaming for their attention, they instead repeated Kuwait government policy on the identity of the Bedoon. Scholars never seriously attempted to conduct detailed historical research of the problem prior to my work in this field. Even threats of mass criminal deportation of the whole Bedoon population of over 110,000 or more to the Comoros Islands, Egypt, the Sudan, and Saudi Arabia has barely raised an eyebrow at the United Nations Human Rights Council among international humanitarian organisations and scholars in Middle East studies. Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International once documented this case with seeming authenticity, but they no longer report reliably on the issue and merely focus on recruitment of Bedoon formants inside Kuwait, exercising a policy of neoliberal human rights intervention to contain the protest movement. In 2015 to 2017, they issued publications attempting to cover up the erasure by downplaying and distorting their account of the facts of the case. These organisations have simply joined the organised media front devoted to disseminating false information or completely oppressing information altogether on the Bedoon's real situation in Kuwait. Most published information on Kuwait that the general public receives today in news feeds is a blended narrative of Kuwaiti, American, and British policy strategically pitched against the Bedoon. International humanitarian NGOs, including the vast Arab human rights networks active throughout the Middle East, including the Arabian Gulf, have followed this policy since the Arab Spring. This includes the well-known, globally positioned Bahrain Human Rights Network. One of the tragedies of the Bedoon case is that humanitarian agencies and journalists working in major Western news organisations had previously begun to document the violent ethnic cleansing of the Bedoon from 1990 to 1995. However, at the time, no academic scholar in the world was willing to assist them to publish this information and research it in further depth. For this reason, we depend on evidence such as the WikiLeaks cables so that the truth can be known. This cable was sent to the US Secretary of State and the Cooperation Council for the Arab States of the Gulf, which includes the United Arab Emirates, the Kingdom of Bahrain, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Sultanate of Oman, the State of Qatar, and the State of Kuwait. The Arab states have their own charters of human rights in which they claim to respect the human rights to international standards and values of the religion of Islam, additional to their participation in the United Nations. John Pilger and the Stealing of a Nation case. In 2003, Pilger published an award-winning documentary called Stealing a Nation. The documentary traced the development of a British Foreign Office policy conjured to steal the identity of a small island population in the Indian Ocean. It was a conspiracy between the governments of the United Kingdom and the United States, which first began to emerge in the 1960s. The policy determined that the population would be described as itinerant, a non-Indigenous group of foreign national workers. The policy functioned to steal the identity of the whole population to facilitate their eradication from their homeland. The group were in fact an Indigenous population and nationals of their own state. The whole population were expelled to Mauritius, where they died in poverty and of grief. This is a hauntingly similar, if not identical, policy of erasure to the one introduced in Kuwait in the same decades via the deprivation of citizenship in a law called Decree 5 of 1960. The law was introduced during British rule. It enabled the nationality committees of the new modern state of Kuwait to deprive half of the Kuwaiti Bedoon population of citizenship under the nationality law of Kuwait of 1959, while the total population of the opposing ethnic group, the towns-dwelling Hadar, would be granted Kuwaiti citizenship. The policy to erase the Bedoon's identity came originally from the British government, makes a great deal of sense if we consider that the Home Office attempted to interfere with its own country advice on Kuwait in 2014. The country advice, also called a country guidance note, is the only country advice to include the name of an ethnic group, the Bedoon, in its title. This factor is indicative of the political significance of the problem of the Bedoon's existence to the British government. From 2014 to 2017, the UK Home Office decided to review its country advice format, commissioning French scholar Claire Beaugrand to conduct the review. Her review attempted to wipe out all reference of the Bedoon suffering from persecution on grounds of their ethnic identity, even though the group had been found to have suffered from persecution on grounds of their ethnic and tribal identity as established in British case law. In fact, ethnic persecution had been listed at point 1.1.1 of the official Home Office guidance note. Such was the significance of the concept of the Bedoon's ethnicity and ethnic persecution. Ethnicity had been established in UK courts as the main cause of the Bedoon's oppression and suffering in Kuwait. Beaugrand of the London School of Economics worked under the supervision of Laura Hammond of the London School of Oriental and African Studies. Hammond accepted it without questions, as did the Home Office itself, which set about publishing the report. In response, I published a challenge to the attempt, which led to the Home Office delaying the new review of its policy on Kuwait, described in the country guidance note. The Home Office then stopped and withheld the new advice for 2 years. This meant the UK Home Office country guidance note version 2.0 was not finally published until 2017, even though Beaugrand had been commissioned in 2014. The work of Australian journalists and intellectuals, Julian Assange and John Pilger, has helped me to prove the Bedoon have been subjected to a pattern of genocide aimed to destroy the size of their population and their culture. Scholars of Middle East studies, both conservative and liberal indulge in ongoing moral bankruptcy with regard to the Bedoon situation in Kuwait. The state of Kuwait's deprivation of economic rights of the Bedoon, the intergenerational oppression of their rights to education and employment, an attempt to deport the whole Bedoon population under the banner of Comoros citizenship, mirrors both British foreign policy discussed by John Pilger in Stealing a Nation and the machinations of a medieval feudal state which has trapped its subjects in a perpetual nightmare of misery and slavery. The regime against the Bedoon is one of the most enduring programs of oppression the modern world has ever seen. The whole basis of the modern state of Kuwait leans on the unstable edifice of introducing foreign nationals continually into the state's population to take advantage of its wealth, while the Bedoon remaining oppressed in a draconian apartheid-like system of the Middle Ages. The only similar system in the world at this time is the national security apparatus of the Israeli occupation against Palestine, and yet Kuwait claims to oppose the oppression of Palestinians by Israel. This position of the state of Kuwait is one of total hypocrisy. To date, the United Nations Human Rights Council and the international community have refused to intervene to help the Bedoon. This includes the Special Rapporteur on Genocide, who has access to nearly all of the evidence discussed in this video, as well as a large body of additional research, historical and empirical research of nearly 1,000 pages. If you would like to find out more about this topic, please watch other videos on this channel and browse my academia account, where you will find a selection of my research on the Bedoon, including my doctoral research and reports sent to open invitations of the United Nations Human Rights Council. Please note the details of my videos and academia account on the screen and in the video description box below. You will also find a range of links to alternative media covering the Julian Assange case. Thank you to all of my supporters in Kuwait and around the world for their ongoing encouragement, and thank you to everyone else who has reached the end of this video for watching. I encourage everyone to carefully study the facts of Julian Assange's case. May the Bedoon obtain their freedom and dignity as soon as possible. Julian Assange should not be forgotten as a modern-day hero and one of the last pillars of truth that we can rely on.